what happens when that doesn't go well? What happens when leadership up higher in the organization has conflict in front of other people, in front of staff or in front of volunteers, and it's not healthy? How do leaders handle that once that happens? It may be great that they make up, behind closed doors or whatever, but how should that be handled?
Oh, I think in situations like that, and it's so difficult, but there's so much credibility at stake, there's so much integrity at stake. I mean, it's really on that leader to go back and, seek the forgiveness of the staff, to be able to admit that that was inappropriate behavior and that wasn't handled well, and to make that apology. And sometimes we miss that people want the leader to win. And so for a leader to humble themselves and go out and say, that really wasn't appropriate, and I was an example of what shouldn't happen, can say so much more than being perfect all the time.
Yeah, I've actually lived this out many times. Unfortunately, I'm a type A, and I tend to want to create tension, and I want to create moments where people will push back. And I learned early on that wasn't, nobody was comfortable with that except for me. I made everybody else around me uncomfortable. And it was like awkward, and nobody wanted to be around me during those moments. And what I had to learn is that there's times where that's appropriate if you've built a culture that says this is the way we operate. And the operating procedures over time slowly became, hey, we will push into each other. What if we have guests in the office, they might walk by and go, oh my gosh, they hate each other. But for us, that became our way of being able to get things done. But everybody on the team had to sort of come to the conclusion that this is the way we operate. It took us a long time to get there. So there's certain moments where a conversation to you as a certain kind of leader may feel really appropriate. To everybody else, it's awkward. And you have to help either steward your team towards that point where everybody goes, all right, we're all willing to say this is how we're going to operate in our culture, or you've got to back up and go, okay, I'm the only one that's like this, and I have to realize it, and now I've got to be appropriate in the way I deal with those situations. So it may be that if we never get there, then all of a sudden all the confrontational type of conversations or the healthy tension has to happen in closed doors. And I don't want to have that in any hallway environment, because then all of a sudden that becomes the gossip train, and everybody talks about, well, did you hear what they were talking about? And you just gotta understand though the complexity of your team. And if you've got a bunch of folks who say, I'm in, let's all move towards this place where we can have these kind of conversations among each other in hallways, nobody's gonna think weird about it, then you can operate that way.
Yeah.
But I'd say that's more of a decision. I mean, Brad,
it is.
Your leadership style doing that, somewhere along the line, my sense is that you invited someone to exercise the same kind of freedom
Absolutely.
and candid discussion that you were putting out on the table. And by permitting that, not just saying, okay, it's so great if we all go in here and just have at it, and everybody's like, well, okay, is this really going to happen? But when you did it and demonstrated it, and that everyone else could see, that's okay. And my opinions matter, and we're really going to go at this, and we're going to walk out of the room really doing the next best thing. That changes everything.
Yeah, and I didn't always have to win those.
Right. And they saw that. They saw that.
If somebody can convince me otherwise, great. Like let's go that direction, or let's make that decision. And that became that became a powerful lesson of, oh wait, Brad doesn't have to win every single argument. Because then it doesn't become about the leader trying to coerce everybody into just follow me, and I will argue you down to the lowest level until I prove that my idea is correct. So giving people that permission, but if you're a harmonious, if you're wired to be on that side of the scale, that scares you to death, because every conversation you have, you feel like I'm about to get fired.
Or they're about to get fired, and I'm having anxiety because they're going to go, I'm going to miss them. Yeah.
Versus, no, this is just the way, this is the way we get to pushing something towards being better, towards excellence.
Healthy.
Now, I would say, while I think in every culture there needs to be the opportunity for open dialogue, discussion, healthy conflict or tension, what you're describing is a specific culture. And so before coming to LifeWay, I was in DC, which is a very aggressive, direct, demanding culture where that was easy. It was normal. It was natural. Whereas if you come into Nashville,
Southern culture.
Southern culture tends to be a little bit more passive aggressive, tends to be a different thing. So I would say you have to be, from a situational leadership standpoint, and even not even leadership, as a teammate, as a team member, I have to decide whether or not I'm going to fit within that culture. And in hiring someone, that's something I need to take a look at too. Is this going to be a culture fit? Specifically, how we handle conflict, how we relate to each other, right or wrong. I'm not saying there's one way to do culture, but I'm saying, how does that fit in? I think that's really important.
Well, it's important to think, if you're part of a team, how do you lead up well? How do you lead across and lead up, especially? Leading down is the simplest form of leadership. But if you're on a team and you're in the middle of that organization and you have a leader who you're trying to lead up to, sometimes you sticking your chest out and going, all right, I'm going to confront you in front of the whole team and let's see how you respond. Most leaders who are running organizations are going to get right back in your face. And it's going to be this moment of, okay, we can see who the big dog is, and most of the time the big dog will be the leader of the organization. So you have to be smart if you're in the middle of the organization in figuring out how do you best bring your idea to the table without it feeling like you're showing up and saying, okay, I've got my sling out, I'm about to take on the giant.
Yeah. Sometimes it's better to wait till after the meeting to take on the giant.
Well, and you said something interesting. You talked about, and then there's this passive-aggressive thing that happens. I mean, I really believe that part of a leader's responsibility is to take ownership and responsibility for the venues and the gathering of the people together. So if there is this passive-aggressive thread that's running through what's happening, as a leader, if you do not address it, and I'm not saying that was passive-aggressive, but if you don't recognize that there's an issue that needs to come onto the table and you don't invite that onto the table, you tacitly approve it. And so you say, it's okay for you to demonstrate passive-aggressive behavior, and it gets tolerated throughout the organization, and you miss the opportunity to get those issues on the table and dealt with in a healthy, productive way.
It is, in some ways, it is poor leadership not to draw those people into the conversation with the team.